Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Now today I'm going to be showing you lots of different ways that you can create cards using this die. Now you do not have to have this die. Honestly, if you had a couple of hearts that are stacking or nesting hearts that go together and you had a banner die, then you pretty much have the same thing. If not, then this one is available, and this has a really good price point. It's a very simple, easy die. There's only 2 dies to it. It has this little banner die that fits nicely on the banner that goes through the heart, but I'm going to show you a fair few different techniques that you are able to use with this really simple die, because it looks simple, but I think that we can manage to make it look really, really good. Obviously, it's not limited to the ideas in this video, but here's a few for you. First up, I am just taking, this is the Warms paper pad from scrapbook.com, but any paper. If you don't already have paper, then you can create your own, get some shades of ink out, and you're able to do it that way. Just use what you have. It just depends if you keep colored paper, cardstock on hand. For a long time, I really didn't. And then, yeah, I got some of these, and I must admit, I do keep a few in my stash now, and they are handy, but for a long time, I just used to color my own cardstock from white paper. Now I'm going to cut these out about 1/4 of an inch thick. Some of them are going to be longer, some of them are going to be shorter, and all I'm going to do is pop these in an order that I kind of just like the look of. There's really no rhyme or reason. There's a couple of some colors and one of the others. It just whatever looked nice to me, and I actually ended up going ahead and cutting a few of these cards, making a few of them because A, I had enough strips, and B, I love how these turned out. So I have got a little bit of mint tape that is just low tech tape there, and I've got 2 little pieces kind of holding it down so the stick is sticky side up on the mint tape. This is from scrapbook.com. It has the perfect amount of low tech for a low tech tape. It is my absolute favorite. I have tried all of them and I definitely came back to this one. Now all I did was just put a piece at the top and a piece at the bottom. I did make sure to kind of put the cardstock wrong side facing upwards, because that would be the side that I'm going to glue. So kind of the pretty side of the cardstock and the cut is face down at the moment, and then when I pop this down it'll be face up, of course. So just some really pretty plain strips of warm cardstock are going to go right down the center of this panel, and it helps me kind of keep them all together. I mean, you could put this on some double-sided tape, you could just glue this down one by one. You certainly don't have to do it this way at all, but this way I kind of just know that everything is in place. I added some liquid glue. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. That's the glue that I have in that little glue bottle. Once I give that a couple of seconds to set and let the glue set, I'm going to turn this the other side up and make sure that everything is cut off nice and even. This is, of course, straight onto my card base. My card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. Then I die cut out 3 of that gorgeous little heart, and I'm going to stack these up for a little bit of dimension. Just because this card is really plain and simple, that's the reason that I'm going to add that extra little bit of dimension and go to that effort. This is the Heartfelt sentiments from Altenew. This is an old one. I've used this in many videos, and I'm simply going to stamp out a sentiment right in the middle where that little banner is. I didn't use the extra banner to cut out extra ones. I felt like this carried it enough. But if you felt like your card needed the extra dimension, then it's definitely there. I quite like the sentiment just because in the inside I'm able to kind of expand upon that and write a little bit for the recipient of this card. It's not necessarily a love card. It means that the heart is just, it could be a caring card, it could be thinking of you, it could be just because you're awesome, it could be, you know, so many different occasions and sentiments are going to work well on the inside, or you can just write your message. I like this one. Then I thought I would add a little bit more dimension because 3 was not quite thick enough, and the idea of die cutting more of these was already done because my die cutting machine was being used by my gorgeous girl. My daughter, she was in full card making mode behind me, so this is her turn. So I'll just add a few little foam strips for dimension. So these are the really, I think these are 9 inches long. These are one of my favorites at the moment. There are lots and lots in a pack. As I said, I will link everything down below in the description box below this video, but honestly, I think most of the things in this video, if you don't have this die or you don't have the supplies, I think you would find something in your own stash that you would be able to use instead. Well, that's the idea anyway. I hope that you are able to kind of just get some ideas and designs and things like that from this video if the actual die is not quite your thing. Now the next one we're going to move on to is like die cut inlay, and I wanted to go a little bit crazy colors for this, but I do have a circle from the Hero Arts Infinity Circle die set. Then my trick when I'm doing a die cut inlay to get everything exactly the same is to pop some low-tack tape on and make sure that I'm not going to be moving the dies around in between the colors that I cut. So you could either put some washi tape down for this. You could probably pop it on your jersey or your clothes a couple of times to take away a little bit of the stick, or if you have another low-tack tape that's going to work well, or you could always use some masking paper and just cut that into strips, and that would be some good low-tack tape as well. But I'm just going to pop the circle on the outside and then the heart roughly even on the inside, and I'm going to run this through with each of these colors. Now I pretty much run them through, and once I do, I keep them whole. I keep them kind of intact. The only one I didn't was the yellow, because I just actually got a tiny little bit of cardstock and die cut that specific little piece. So for my die cut inlay, I have a square card base, and I'm just using the liquid glue. This is really easy. If you wanted to, you could die cut all the pieces with some double-sided adhesive on the back, like some stick-it sheets or some just full adhesive sheets. However, I find that when I do that, I get a lot of waste with the sheet, so I prefer to just use some liquid glue. These pieces are all nice and big. This is the easiest kind of die cut inlay that you can do because all of the pieces here in our little puzzle are so big. There are no fiddly pieces, no pieces that I needed tweezers or anything like that for. I'm able to just pop them all down, which is my favorite kind of die cut inlay. So that's definitely one of the things that I look at when I go to purchase a die. I look at how easy it would be to do all of these techniques with it, because when I purchase a die, I really want to make sure it's versatile. I can use it in different ways. I can make it look different every time I use it. So this one, as I said, I went with some crazy colors, and then right at this point, I decided that the mint around the outside was not quite right. So quickly before this dries, I'm going to pull this up. It does get the paper just a little bit, but that's okay, because instead I'm going to replace it with this sparkly gold outline here. And then once I had started with the gold, I kind of wanted to carry on. I needed a really kind of simple, clean card, and so once I'd put the gold around the outside here, I decided to quickly make a second one whilst I was at it. Although when I was looking at this, I just noticed that the little point of the heart needs a little bit of extra glue. It clearly didn't have any glue behind it, so I'll pop a tiny little bit extra there and hold it down for a second until it is set. And then here is where I decided to just quickly put together a second one. This one I did with a square. In fact, I think I cut it out and then I just used my trimmer to get the kind of square shape around the outside rather than using a die and having to get out another die set. I again add the liquid glue, and then this one's going to have just a tiny little white border all around the outside for this card. This one I wanted to keep really plain, and I still wanted to use some of the gorgeous mint. I really like that mint kind of color of cardstock, but then I'm going to pop the gold back in the center. The pink was a little bit too intense, and the gold is very simple. So this is kind of the most simple form of die cut inlay. Really easy, really good. Now I do have a couple more sentiments from that same Heartfelt sentiment die set, and the good thing I like about these banners is that they fit a lot of shapes and a lot of the sentiments that I found I already have. So that's kind of a bonus. There is actually a stamp set that comes with this. You can buy it separately, sorry, that you can purchase it either as a bundle or individually, and of course that has lots of sentiments that are going to fit nicely across the banner, but I didn't purchase that. I found that lots of the sentiments I already had on hand are going to fit here perfectly. So a really simple missing your smile and then a love you card. Now next one we are moving on to. This one we are going to really change up the die. So I just want the hearts for this one. I'm going to use my little Cutter Bee scissors. They have a really nice sharp point to them, and I'm just going to follow the lines of the heart die. So it basically looks like an outline of a heart, and you probably wouldn't know that the banner ever went through it. Now this one is, I really love how this heart turned out because we changed the look of it so much. And again, I'm not one for measuring. I don't love to do lots of careful measuring with this. So this suits my style really, really well. So I took a scrap piece of white cardstock and all I'm going to do is cut some really thin strips. It doesn't matter what size these are. It depends on the size of heart that you create for yourself, thin or thick, but I decided to go pretty thin for this one. Pretty delicate, I guess. And this is, as I said, just some spare white cardstock. I use for all of my card fronts, card bases, absolutely everything. I use the 110 pound Frenchville cardstock, which used to be the Recollections brand, and I think it rebranded and came out. I get this from the Spotlight stores here in New Zealand, but I know it's available in Australia and I'm sure probably everywhere else too. But that's just what I use, so I know that even all the scraps that I use are going to match the exact same cardstocks that I do all of my die cutting from, because they're all going to be the same white, the same shade, because they're all the same cardstock. That's what I like most about just using the one kind. Now I'm going to pop some double-sided tape around just a few of the sides here for this heart. Then I shall take off all of the release papers and take some of those strips and kind of angle them just from one side to the other. Now there's no rhyme or reason. I thought I would kind of go on an angle so the one end is wider and one end is skinnier. And I also didn't know how many strips to do. I think I ended up doing 4 strips and just felt like that was enough. So just kind of start at one side and pop them through to the other. Then I just cut off all the excess little pieces. I do kind of get my scissors in behind the heart. So I want to make sure that they finish behind the heart, not to the side of the heart, and kind of not equal with the edge of the heart, just because I don't want it to be seen from the side. So I do make sure that I kind of angle my scissors in behind the heart. Now these are the same colors of cardstock that I used in the very first card in this one. So I figured out it was sitting there on my desk and all of the colors came from the same paper pad, so I know that they're all going to go together. And then all I do here is from the back of my heart, I really do freehand this. I don't measure, I don't trace. All I do is kind of cut a piece, hold it down, look how I might need it to go, add a little bit of liquid glue on those really thin strips and just a little bit on the previous piece that I did, and then cover it up until that white line, kind of the next white line. So I know this kind of looks a bit tricky with estimating like what kind of shape you would do, and of course you could do this with any shape, circles, squares, hearts, stars, anything at all. You could use some glitter papers in this, would look really nice. So many different options, but really simple, no measuring involved, and I think this looks really cool. At the end of this I think it looks really cool. So I just kind of cut an angle, see which piece it can go in, and then sometimes I have to adjust it a little bit, but generally it's not too bad. And then I just cut anything off the excess around the edge of the heart. As I said, I try and kind of angle my scissors in there to go right behind the edge of the heart. Last couple of colors that you could do, and I mean you could turn this into a shaker card if you once you've put the white strips down across, then you could add a layer of acetate to the back, and then you could add some foam, and then that would be put your little bits and pieces in and then do the backing to it. That would make a really cool shaker card as well. I mean, lots of different options, so many different options for such a basic shape, and that's what I love about these kind of dies when I'm looking at purchasing them. So when I turn this over, I'm really impressed. I love the look of this one, and you wouldn't tell that that's not kind of as the die was intended to be. So then I did decide to kind of pop the whole heart up a little bit. And obviously I do want the heart to still be the main focal point, that's for sure, but I did want the rest of it to be pretty plain. Now I kind of have a couple of go-to options if this is what I want to do. The first option is that I can run the background through an embossing folder and just keep it white, just have a white piece of paper in the background. And the second option is to use a really light color and use a stencil. Now this is the Mega Blocks stencil, and obviously it just has really big block gaps in it. This reminds me a little bit like the Tim Holtz tiles stencil, except for obviously mega instead of smaller tiles. And I really like this. Again, I'm just going for a really soft look. So I have some squeezed lemonade distress oxide ink, and I just have a little makeup sponge, and I'm going to add a really light layer. I do use a couple of pieces of the low tack tape, seeing as I had it sitting there on my desk. I can reuse them time and time again, and I'm just going to dab on a very little bit of ink. I don't want this to kind of overpower the heart. I don't want it to be too distracting. I just want it to be some really small noise going on in the background. I'm not too worried about the center there because I know that's going to be covered up, so every time I come in with fresh ink from my ink pad, I dab it off there in the center, and that's why the center is a little bit darker. But I just want this to be such a light layer, and even though it looks pretty light when I'm doing it like this, when you take off the stencil, there is actually a reasonable amount of ink on there, so it is good to kind of lift up the stencil every now and then and have a little check as to how you are going in comparison to the white cardstock that you started with. So I know this looks like a little bit of a mess, but I promise it's just a little bit of light background noise. I peel off the release paper from the foam tape that I popped on, and then this is going to go right in the center. I want a really plain and simple sentiment for this one, so I'm going to reach into the Paper Rose All Occasions. These ones, I know you've seen these lots and lots of times, but I feel like they're going to last me forever. Such a versatile set, lots of different fonts, lots of different sizes, and so for this one I decided to just do a You're the Best. I needed one of those. Well, I'm going to in about a week or two need one of these, so I thought that this would work really well. I think this is really caring and kind. I love that it goes nicely with the heart, all the warm colors with the soft yellow in the background, and then a really simple sentiment. But hopefully your memory is better than mine, because I totally forgot, but what I needed to do was just put some foam tape on half of this so that it sits nice and flush with the heart, seeing as that has been popped up on some foam tape too. But I totally forgot and had to go back and fix it in a little second. So I will pop some liquid glue on the other half of that, and this way it'll sit nice and evenly. But anyhow, that is this really, really simple card. With all of these cards, you could definitely add some gems, you could add some Nouveau drops, you could add some enamel dots, you could add anything that kind of works for you. But I wanted to keep these really, really simple and show you some different ways and different techniques that you are able to use this one die set and kind of get different looks from it. I could go on forever with these, but this video is already long enough, and I hope that this has really just given you some ideas. As I said, whether you purchase this die set or whether you have something similar that you can create using just heart stacking dies and your own banner dies, or just make your own banners. But yeah, I think this first one is my absolute favorite, and it was the quickest and most simple to make as well. But these other ones are nice and fun and bright, and die cut inlay is always a really fun technique, especially when the pieces are nice and big to be able to puzzle piece in. And then the last one is really fun because I don't even think it looks really like you've used the same die. Thank you so much for joining me. As I said, supplies will be listed in the description box below. There's also lots of other ways that you can support me down in that description box, and there is also my snail mail address if you would like to send me a card. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!